Okay, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Smith, and I am officially a first Q or third degree brown belt in Ishinru Karate and Japanese Ju Jitsu. I'm heavily cross trained in Judo, and I've also studied Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for about a year and a half in total, although admittedly not all at one time. I have, in fact, tapped out second degree black belt Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners, including a professional fighter who had over 20 wins, and I tapped him out twice with the simple front wrist lock and once with the disarmer, which is the same finishing move as Becky Lynch uses in WWE. Um, so he had over 20 professional MMA wins, and I was actually already medically disabled at the time when we rolled, and he was not letting me win, and I beat him 3 out of 4 rolls. And I'm going to explain how that works. But this video is going to be specifically tailored toward the pulling guard strategy that is used in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu only matches because, for one thing, they don't allow the standing grappler to apply a leg lock or an ankle lock to the guy who's pulling guard for some reason. If you don't believe me, watch Jesse Incamp's white belt level BJJ video where he eventually chokes out a white belt Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy. But he started off by trying to use leg locks, and the referee kept telling him he wasn't allowed to use leg locks against the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy, which is stupid. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu should evolve to allow all locks because that's grappling. And that's what I'm talking about. In a real fight, if a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu opponent tried to pull guard on me, I'm going to immediately apply a front figure 4 ankle lock, which is pretty simple. You take the near side arm's radius bone and put it under the Achilles of the opponent's ankle, and you tuck their foot under your shoulder, right under your armpit right here. And your other hand gets clasped like this and goes over their ankle and applies down pressure while this one applies up pressure on the Achilles tendon. And you can tap them right out while you're standing and they're grounded, and they were foolishly grounded themselves. All right. And all you have to do is roll back like this, and they are going to tap or it's going to tear their Achilles tendon. All right. That's the number one thing, the objection that I have to pulling guard, and also exercises where the standing person is somehow required to enter the grounded person's guard, which is what they often do at the Gracie gym. I'm like, the only reason you beat me is you required me to enter in an inferior manner when I would have either passed your guard or would have applied a standing figure 4 ankle lock to your leg while you were laying on your back. Okay. So this stuff that I don't know why it's not seen in MMA, because they don't tape their ankles. So when somebody tries to pull guard in MMA, certainly all you have to do is figure 4 ankle lock. They don't even have tape on their ankles. Figure 4 ankle lock and tap the sucker right out. And you can ground yourself while you're doing the figure 4 ankle lock. You can actually wrap your legs around the other person's knee and pull their knee down like a fulcrum even stronger into the ankle lock. If you absolutely need to, you can do that. You don't you don't just have to do it standing. I mean, you can lay down and really crank hard enough to rip their freaking ankle off just about. But the one that I beat the pro fighter with, I was I was the one in guard position, BJJ guard, not standing guard like this. I was in the grounded position, and the pro fighter was trying to pass my guard, and he when he thought he was going to get past my right leg, he reached out toward me with his left hand, and I caught him the first time. I caught him in a street legal, but not MMA legal version of the front wrist lock, in which I caught 3 of his fingers like this and front wrist locked him and tapped him out. And he actually verbally submitted. All right. And he was like, technically that's not legal in MMA or BJJ because you're grabbing a minority of fingers. He said to be legal, you have to grab at least all 4 fingers or you have to grab across the hand. So I was like, well, let's reset the position and we'll see if something else happens. So the exact same thing happened on the second roll, except that I caught him in across all 4 fingers the second time and tapped him and verbally submitted him again right out. All right. And so don't tell me the wrist locks don't work. They do work. We were in gloves. We didn't have taped wrists, but we were in gloves. The third roll, he tapped me with the disarmor because I hadn't practiced in a long time of how to get out of the disarmor in time to keep from getting tapped by it. And I was like, I know how to get out of it. So I was like, let's try it again. And you go ahead and put the disarmor on me and see if I can get out of it. So we tried it again. And the second disarmor example, for example, which was the fourth roll in total, I managed to roll out of the disarmor before he got the 4 lock on me. And then I got back to my feet and reversed it using one of my sensei's tricks and put the disarmor on him and tapped him out with the disarmor. Now, my sensei's trick was that when you get behind, if you get someone's back in a standing position, to go ahead and stand. Let me see if I can show this. I got a mess here, but I don't particularly care. Stand on the back of the person's knee. There's a pressure point deep inside the rear side of your kneecap, the rear side of your knee. And if you stand on someone's knee, that alone will nearly tap them out, but it'll make their balance go down and they'll be grounded, which is perfect for applying the disarmor to their arm because you grounded their knee on the same side that you're going to attack their arm from the side or the rear. And so then with the disarmor, you end up locking the elbow out and up, and the wrist can either be a reverse wrist lock on them or it can be a closed fist or whatever their hand position ends up being. But generally, you're going to want the reverse wrist lock on them and the elbow locked out and up. And then you just hyperextend the elbow by sitting down on the elbow and shoulder and pulling up on the arm. All right. But it starts with the trick of stepping on the back of the person's knee, which is also banned in mixed martial arts. All right. So the real martial arts is actually banned in mixed martial arts. That's why self-defense instructors tell you MMA does not work in the street. And BJJ does not work in the street. All right. I've seen a video of a kid got bit up by a bigger opponent who attacked him. He thought he was supposed to wrestle his attacker. And he got bit 6 times all over his neck and back, and he's got permanent scars. And he's like, he defended himself with BJJ. Yeah, you successfully survived the fight, but you didn't win the fight. The attacker won the fight. He left scars on you that are going to be there when you're 90 years old. All right. And I said, you know what works better is a straight punch to the throat or a kick to the groin or the knee. All right. So pulling guard, back on the subject of pulling guard is not going to work in a street self-defense situation. You don't want to be on pavement or whatever the surfaces might be, the gravel or the front lawn with sticks and rocks and who knows what else around, struggling with somebody. Oh, it's great to know that in case you somehow end up in that position, but that should not be your focus in self-defense. There is no way that you would want to pull guard in a self-defense situation. I don't even think pulling guard makes sense in MMA at all. Because if the rules were realistic, you should be able to stomp kick somebody in the legs and in the body. Maybe not the head, because that could kill somebody. But they don't even allow stomp kicking. And if stomp kicking was allowed to a grounded opponent, then pulling guard would be totally negated. Which, they should have some kind of, that should be a timidity rule anyway. A lot of times I've seen them actually pull guard and fold their arms behind their head like this and sit there and wait for the standing opponent to attack them, and the referee stands it up. But timidity and running away from your opponent or avoiding fighting is already against the rules. So the person who pulls guard and then just lays on the ground ought to be penalized a point for timidity, in my opinion. Because they'll literally lace their hands behind their head while they're laying on the ground and wait for the opponent to try to enter their guard, which the person on their feet should never try to enter the guard of a BJJ fighter, even if they are themselves a black belt. Because I'm pretty sure the guard position is a superior position. All right. But pulling guard does not work when real rules are allowed, when real fighting is allowed. All right. I can stomp kick you in the groin while you're pulling guard. Much less the fact that I already explained that I can front figure four ankle lock you. And if I can front figure four ankle lock you, I can already roll you over and get you into the reverse figure four ankle lock, which is even more painful. All right. And there's more than one type of ankle lock or leg lock you could apply while your opponent is trying to pull guard. So, or wrist lock if you catch their hand while they're pulling guard. So, it just doesn't even make sense. And the only reason you don't see more people tapped out in MMA is because either the fact that they got their wrist taped or the fact that neither fighter actually knows the Japanese Jiu Jitsu techniques because they're not taught very many places anymore. It's dying not because it's useless, but it's dying because there aren't enough teachers who actually know the real Japanese jiu-jitsu art anymore. And the other thing is, in order to keep you from going in and dominating a BJJ fighter as a white belt who came from a different school of martial arts, because in my case, I was already a black belt candidate in Japanese jiu-jitsu and karate when I joined the Gracie gym. He allowed me to wear my brown belt, my third degree brown belt from the karate class because he knew I already knew a lot of grappling. And he could have told me to just come in as a white belt, and maybe I should have anyway. But I felt, and I think he admitted that it didn't make sense to neglect the fact that I was already highly trained in martial arts. So then he let me go to his classes where his assistant instructor was teaching, and I tapped out the assistant instructor who was a professional MMA fighter with over 20 wins. I tapped him out 3 out of 4 rolls on the very first day of class. And he was a second degree Gracie black belt. Why? Because he had never seen the things that I had taught, and I had already seen everything that he knew.